name is Eva Neumann, née Birnbaum. I was born in a town in the Carpathian Mountains, which was called Svalöv, and it was, the next big town was Munkac. From that everybody knows approximately where we are. And I went to school there, every few months a different school, because it was a border town, and it was occupied by the Russians, Polish, Ukraine, Hungarian, Czech. And before the First World War, my parents were born there. And then after the First War was finished, I was taken by Hungary. My family had a father, mother, and 2 little brothers. And family was, I always thought that the whole town was called Birnbaum because my grandfather had a lot of children, and then the wife died and he remarried, and there was more children, more Birnbaum. So there were millions and cousins, so lots and lots of cousins. And we lived there in peace till about 1939. Not quite peace, already was anti-Semitism. But now I know how bad anti-Semitism was, because a child doesn't know. You know, if we were in trouble in school, then my parents said, don't worry, the war will be over in 5 minutes and you'll be all right. But there was a lot of anti-Semitism. My parents must have, because first of all, they took my father away very early, before the war. Took all the people like doctors, solicitors, dentists, all the professionals, and put them into very hard work, you know, distributing food. And they had to carry the sacks of food, and they were treated very, very badly. So that was already painful to watch Mommy trying to cope. And then there was, when he came back, we couldn't go on the street after 6, and we couldn't go on the street before 6 in the morning, evening. It took the business away. You weren't allowed to employ, you weren't allowed to be employed. And it was very tense. But thinking back, what my mother used to do, like, you know, cut the potatoes smaller, and you have your, you know, like, it wasn't rationed, it was just not existent. So because we had a bit of land, and we managed to, at night, dig up the potatoes, and they didn't see it because we weren't allowed to take our own crop from the garden or from the... So life was, for them, very, very hard. They became more Nazis than the Nazis. And they were really very, very cruel, because they knew us when we employed them. So there was this revenge kind of, we were the Jews who were supposed to have been rich and, you know, supposed to have been. And they really were very, very cruel. If they could hit you on the street or throw a stone at you, nobody objected. And Sunday morning, my father and my brother went to shul, and they came back 5 minutes later. They said, you're not allowed to, you have to go back home, and you're not allowed out anymore. And about 2 hours later, they walked in, invaded the house, and screamed, get your cases, pack up, do as little as you can. And we were all taken to the shul, not knowing, I mean, definitely not knowing, and also living in the on a border. Lots of the Polish people used to come over and stayed with us, and they told us the stories what's happening in Poland, and we didn't believe it. We just did not believe it. We went to the shul hall, and all the town and the surrounding towns were all gathered in shul. So there, when the atmosphere started, crying, davening, saying the Hillel, children screaming, not enough food, very squashed, wasn't big enough for the town and the surroundings. And yeah, we stayed there only about 2 days. And then we went to the station, and we went to Munkac.
Which is the
main town. And there was a big brick factory, and all of us were there, and then Munkac and their surrounding districts. And then we were allocated work, and the barrack there was no beds, and you had to sleep on the floor, and not much food, and the atmosphere was more for us very, 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 very bad. One morning they announced that we have got to stand in, they've got to come out, everybody with A and B. So we really were taken away in alphabetical order. And we moved into these cattle cars. And that was horrendous, really. Too many people, 2 buckets of water. The first one was spilled before we even started. It was my uncle who was very, very ill, was very old. And he died in the wagon, but I'm still not sure if it was our wagon or the next wagon. But they didn't want to tell us. So I think it was in our wagon. And it was so bad that it had to take turns sitting. And we arrived in the middle of the night. And it was, to describe the situation in the cattle car, it's not even possible. And we arrived at night, and they opened the wagons, and the only thing you saw is huge sea of people, hats and things, and very dark. And it was a sort of kind of a rainy day, so there was no light at all, except the headlights shining on the place where Mengele stood, the table facing us, and screaming and shouting, "Stand here, stand there, come in, do this and do that," and bewildered. By the time I jumped off that cattle car, because the older ones were helped, so my mother got off first, and my father, and I just jumped off, and I started screaming, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," but that was it. And then we went to be sorted. Nobody knows who went what and why we were sorted. And that was the time when you lost all your will or questions or identity. I always quote Elie Wiesel. He said the worst thing was you were dehumanized. And that, you just followed like an animal, and you behaved like an animal. And it's undescribable, obviously. It's not, even I don't believe it. So when I talk about it, I think how anybody can. That's partly why people never spoke, because the vastness of it and the horror of it, it's not explainable. I was separated. That's the last time I saw my mother and father. And then we still had to wait to be put in barracks after we were shaven and tattooed and put on a thin cotton dress in April. It was so cold, it was unbearable. And as I went outside, we stopped on the other side of the fence. There were kind of just a line. The men were doing the same, and they also came back waiting where to go. And I recognized my father. And I went after him and said, "Daddy, can you see those chimneys? All huge big flames. What are they for?" So he said, "Don't worry, look at all these people. They're probably baking bread." And I'm still wondering, was he kidding me? Did he know? Or did he also didn't maybe not know? And yeah, he just gave me a brocha and told me to be strong and, gave me. And that was the last. And that was the beginning of life in Auschwitz. So we stayed in Birkenau, and we had to walk every day. You know how far it is. From Birkenau to Canada, and then back in the evening. It was really unbearable. Canada was called Canada because the transport who got undressed, all the clothes came to Canada. It's only a part of Auschwitz. It's only this. And our job was to sort these clothes. And occasionally we managed to pinch or fried or loot or whatever, a bit of bread or something. So to the other people, Canada was, Even now, if I meet somebody and I said I was in Canada, oh, you lucky thing. Probably I was more lucky, but I had to work near the crematorium, so it wasn't. And then we also found valuables, a lot of valuables in people's clothes. And this man, the man told us, no way are you allowed to give these valuables to them. That had to be put separately and give it to the couple. The couple was the Jewish leader. But this man said, don't, because you are helping them to make more trouble. Anyhow, so I said, one day he came, he said, keep the diamonds and then give it to me with your shoes. Try to find another way of walking. And they put these diamonds into our shoes. All of us had 1 or 2 diamonds in our heel. And it was very bad because the shoes were wearing out and we couldn't get rid of it because of this diamond. Anyhow, and eventually I got promoted to work near the crematorium, which was even a bigger honor than being in Canada. There was a crematorium in Canada. And it was still sorting. As I went into the first room, we had to go into the first room, take the clothes out and sort it. But we didn't go further. We never been into the crematorium itself. It's just in the first room. And that was my job. And that's how I lived for more or less 9 months. Food consisted of a piece of bread and a bowl of so-called soup. There were lots of places in Auschwitz where they kept families, children, gypsies. And because it was coming to the end, they had to get rid of them. Now, when we came, we didn't scream because we didn't know what we are doing. But these people lived in Auschwitz, so they knew if they are there, and they wouldn't go in. And they were screaming and shouting, and they had to shoot in the air, to frighten them and push them in. And it was tremendous. And the best part was when they said, Schmeisser, then it was fine. Then we knew it was over, and they're not suffering anymore. It was alive or non-existent. You made your body do it. Your mind that wasn't even working. The only thing sometimes I thought, how can we do that? How can a human being watching people go in the gas chamber? And we couldn't give an answer. We couldn't give an answer. And I always had that feeling that they must give us something to eat, or in the food something. But it was just like a thought. It's never been documented that drugs were used. And after about the 3rd or 4th trip, he came up to me and said, apologize, please forgive me. I made inquiries. I made my job to make inquiries. And I chased the woman who used to work in the kitchen. So the woman said to him, are you mad? Of course they were drugged. You can't do that without being drugged. Now it's documented everywhere. She said that they came into the kitchen every morning, 2 men carrying a huge big sacks of powder, and every urn got a handful of this, whatever it was. The liberation was, one morning was loudspeakers that we've got to empty the camp, didn't say why. And anybody who can walk, who should stand this side, and anybody who's not capable to walk, or ill, or not well, should stay. Of course, I ran away, obviously. I wanted to walk. We didn't know that staying was the right thing. Because within 2 days, the Russian occupied, and they were home. So I still had the death march. So we started walking. And we walked, I think, for years. And that was very bad. Day and night, walking from camp to camp to camp. And nobody was going to take us in because they were all full from the previous transports. And snow and cold and no proper clothes and no food. The only food we had most of the time, I think we stopped twice to eat what we could find on the farm. We weren't given to it, but we, the raw potatoes and potato peel, which I made and ate. I never eat anything else except potato peel. It tasted so good. But we had snow, which helped helped us to survive because it was liquid. But we tripped over bodies and bodies. All the street on the ways were full with bodies, and everybody, if you stopped, you were shot. You weren't allowed to stop. And I was walking with an old lady who was 42 or something. To us, that was old. And she was, I looked after her a bit. Probably I needed her, she needed me, you know. And one night we were walking, and you know you can sleep walking. Don't try it, but you can. And so we leaned on each other, just drowsing off for a minute. And one day I said, right, I'm going to stop now. Daddy will forgive me, and everybody will forgive me for what I do, but I cannot go anymore. And then I thought, if I move, she's going to die with me, and I can't do that. So that was, again, another yard, another feet, another. And eventually we ended up in Belgium, and that was terrible. We looked in, and they wouldn't let us in. So we ended up in a military barracks. And there was nobody there, just a few German soldiers. And we were allocated about 3 or 4 rooms. In each room, we were about 60 or 70 people. No lying down, only sitting. Everybody had typhoid already. I've got a diamond in my shoe. If you give me a packet of salt, I'll give you the diamond. It's very interesting. I still don't know why I needed salt, but all of us were craving for salt. I think the typhoid did something, the craving was. And next day he bought a packet of salt. And we finished it within minutes. Everybody just put their finger, licked it, and we felt better. It was something medically, what I don't know. And the next day I said, if you bring me an urn of soup, enough for my room to share out, then I give you another one. And they were knackers. They were not like little diamonds, they were big. Anyhow, he brought me the soup, and I gave him the other diamond. And so they probably gave us another few days of life. But these Russians came, and it was led by a general, and an army was walking after him. And he wanted to go past, on this path where I was supposed to be lying. And he took my hand and pulled me up, and he said, she's still alive. And he asked them to bring a stretcher, and they brought a stretcher, and I was taken to hospital. And I was there for also, don't know how long, but quite a long time. So one day he managed to come in, but there was no nurse in there, and sat on my bed, and he said to me, and I want to tell you now, I'm a Jewish doctor, but nobody knows I'm Jewish. So don't say anything, I just give you some advice. I give you an armband which says on it typhoid, because otherwise the Russians will get you, and whatever they used to do to the girls. And the 3 of us were protected by my armband, because if they saw anybody with this armband, they ran away. And then we started hitchhiking back home. He told us to hitchhike, and each time we should go in somewhere and have something to eat and ask the people how to go on. And we really met some very nice Germans, very hospitable. And 1948, I had to go to work. That was the communist thing. So I went to work in a kindergarten. And after a few weeks, they said, you got to join the Communist Party. And that's when everybody started leaving Budapest. And it was time to go. So there was an organization who were making false papers, and managed to get some money. And we bought these papers, and we went at night, and we went as far as Sopron. You know Sopron? That's a border, and we were caught there. We were caught there. So I managed to get us out. I stayed a year in Geneva, and I met my husband in Geneva, and I got married. I felt very safe, and I felt I have a family, and I had a house, but it was very difficult, very strange, very alien, everybody, and everybody was still busy with their lives. You know, there wasn't. Eventually, they become very friendly with a certain type, a certain age, and it got easier. But it was hard because I didn't belong. I couldn't keep my husband at home. He had to go to work, and it was like alone. Very quickly, basics I had to learn. Had to. I had a private teacher. I said, no reading or writing. I just want to speak. So we managed to get all the Russian in, which we just made up. And then I started reading children's books. And then when the kids came, then it was easier. I had to, and I read to them all the time. You see, I started off mainly with children, taking children to Auschwitz. And the whole idea was to make these children more Jewish and more interested in where they belong, because most of them were a little bit like not quite belonging. Don't be afraid. Be what you are. Keep to your religion to make you feel safer, because you belong more. And just go the right way, and you'll be happy. And don't say it can't happen again. Fight against it. And if you don't show them what happened, what can happen, then we are losing. And we are losing our children.